All right. Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. Today's guest is part of our Business Owner series and will offer insights into the needs, wants, and desires of this highly sought after client demographic. Today, our incredible business owner is Scott Carlson. Scott, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me on. My name is Scott Carlson. I live in New York City. We were just chatting. I'm about to send a kid off to college, so we were having a nice little moment of like excitement and sadness. The agency is called Van's General Store, and the relevance to that is my son's name is Van. So we named the agency, I named the agency after my son with the reminder of why I go to work every day. And now he's leaving the nest. So we started Van's General Store about 11 years ago. I've worked in advertising and run big departments of big agencies like Deutsch and Chiat Day, and some of the global ones. I worked at Mother. And about 12 years ago, when my son was much smaller, I realized I really wanted to spend more time with him growing up, and I wanted him to see me having fun. I wanted him to see me with my creative friends and the great people I get to work with, but most importantly, having fun and not being an absent dad sitting in airport lounges, for half of his life. Also, at that time, media was changing like overnight. Every night there was something new. Social media was starting, Instagram was starting, influencers were coming on. So there was a lot of different ways to communicate and tell stories. And my background is fine art. Before marketing, I got into marketing through a friend, Andy Spade, who's now my creative partner at Vans. I really wanted to start to communicate and do branding in a little bit different way than the agencies were doing. And that's how it got started.
Wow. Okay. So the your son and the agency is going off to college.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, your background is fine art. What exactly does fine art mean?
For me, it was I moved to New York to become a famous painter, hang in
Mm,
MoMA. And that was my dream. I went to the Art Center College of Design in Los Angeles, and I went out to New York for that. And I loved the excitement about New York. I loved every minute of New York, every hour of New York. And as a young kid in his early 20s, like it was fabulous. But I wasn't selling art in the way I wanted to. And I was doing a lot of photography for magazines like Interview and Rolling Stone and things like that, which also, don't pay on a regular basis as a freelance photographer. And I was sitting in the park one day talking to a friend who in Soho, whose name is Andy Spade, and he created Kate Spade, and he has an agent. He had an agency called Partners in Spade, and at the time he was at an agency, and I was telling him, I was like, I don't know what to do. I got to start figuring out how to make money. I'm painting. It's okay. And he said, well, why don't you come in and we can get you some work in the studio and you can help with storyboards and design, stuff like that. I went in and instantly fell in love with advertising. I was like, this is a puzzle. I love this puzzle, and there's creative ways of solving the puzzle. And because I didn't come from the marketing background of it, to me, I approached it the same way I would do any art project. And it was just much more holistic. And I was like, oh, you could do this and you could do that. And people communicate with this. And, why are you doing it that way? Because I had no, parameters on me because nobody ever taught me those parameters. And it worked out really well. And I was only there for a couple weeks, and Donnie Deutsch heard about me somehow through a friend, not that I had any reason to be heard of, and ended up going over there to interview for Donnie, and he hired me on the spot, and that was it. That was the beginning of my real career, working in advertising. And Donnie was an amazing boss. Really had patience for people, really looked at outside of the marketing world or the advertising world, like what kind of people do we bring in to tell stories and things like that. So he was an incredible mentor. And I was lucky enough to be able to work with some older creatives at Deutsch at that time, Kirk Souter being a main person there. Really, really just took me under their wing and didn't suppress any of the stuff that I was doing that may have seemed a little bit out in left field, but helped me understand how to take that work and get it on brand. Understand a brand's DNA, understand how to read a brief from a client, understand client language, understand that the client's needs are real needs, and you can't just do cool stuff. And so I had a great, and Donnie's dad also, David Deutsch, another main character in my life, a mentor, to just really help me understand communication at a level that was a little bit more straightforward than some of the stuff I was doing. Yes.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Do you still paint?
I do. I still paint. I have a studio upstate.
Yeah.
It's
Great.
not the same anymore. I'm not knocking out paintings in a month now. They take a year and a half. But yeah, I still paint, still sell paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Cool. From my understanding of fine art is most painters, outside of Da Vinci, none of their work is worth anything until they're dead, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm leaving it all to my kid. Oh, hopefully it'll take care of him.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, yeah, I'm always curious about different experts focus on branding, and you talked about getting to a brand's DNA. Do you have a specific strategy or tactic, how you kind of pull that from the client and figure that out to help them execute it?
No, not really. There's a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different. So one of the things that we talked about, we haven't addressed it yet here. One of the reasons I opened up Vans was really, and we touched on it, was really looking at how communication was exploding, right? And there's just all these different places to talk to, and different generations were doing it, right? Um, and just from my group, from my friend and the people we knew, I knew that there was a better way of bringing makers in to solve brand problems, right? Because and this will be a long-winded conversation, get back to the DNA thing, but sometimes the answer to a brand's situation is their in-store experience, and it's not their what you would consider commercial branding at all. And we would come in and say, well, what's happening is your in-store experience does not connect with what you've been putting out on the outside. Um, and I started looking at how we solve some of these problems, and I realized, like, you can't just solve that with ad guys. You can't just have copywriters and art directors and strategists and account people in a room and solve a lot of these problems. You need an architect, you need a sociologist, you might need a librarian, right? Like, you need people who are used to making things come together and talk about what is this thing that we're trying to achieve? What's our goal? What's our communication need? And so at that point, I was like, I really wanted to create more of a maker's culture in our company than having an agency where people just came together and sat at desks. Um, my the person I started the agency with is Liev Schreiber, and Liev is an actor, director, writer,
I
producer,
was just watching Hard Knocks before this interview.
the voice of God, um, as Aaron Rodgers put it last season. Uh, it's And I was explaining to him what I wanted to do, and he was like, "I love that, and I'd like to be involved, and I can bring in the entertainment and the theatrical world to solving these problems." Right? He doesn't come in as a celebrity; he comes in as a creative director and a friend and a partner. So when we get to do things, like we did a project for Cadillac, we did a film for Cadillac, and it was a mid form, length. I think it was about 5 minutes, but um, Liev was able to bring in, a writer from HBO Sports. So that's, somebody who understood sports. So the movie was about a boxer. It was about Chuck Wepner, the inspiration behind Rocky. And the campaign at the time was Dare Greatly, right? Cadillac was Dare Greatly, and who dared more greatly than Chuck Wepner getting the ring with Ali? So we did a film about Chuck, and Leah was able to bring us, an Emmy award-winning sports writer who just killed it. I mean, he just knocked it out. So, that was part of the role. So we looked at like what kind of makers do we need in order to solve problems. Getting back to the DNA question, we do everything from relaunching a brand for Pepsi, doing a film for Cadillac, to a lot of startups, right? So sometimes a brand will come to us with their DNA baked in, but somewhere in their story arc, there needs to be a new chapter, or they need to relook at their communication, or they need to see that their customer base is now outgrown who they are, and there's a new customer base coming in. So a lot of brands understand who they are and come to it, and then there's other brands who just start right away from, we need a name and a logo, and this is what we want to do, and how do we do it, right? So we've had the opportunity to do a bunch of that stuff. So in some cases, we get to create the brand DNA for somebody by looking at the competitive set, what they want to do, who they're talking to, who they're targeting. And in other cases, they come to us, fully baked with, this is who we are. And we may say, you know what, we've actually found out that that's not who you are, right? Like we've done a bunch of research and we've done our studies, and you're close, but that's not exactly who you are. And you make a little pivot on something, and hopefully things get better. But we
Hmm.
have an incredible strategy group that helps dissect all of that stuff.
Hmm. Awesome, awesome. And how did you get connected with Live Schreiber?
With Liev, so
Yep.
Liev uh, went to high school with my wife and is a local New Yorker. So he's just part of my wife's, group, and every once in a while. And I was working on some films for Chevy that were longer format. And I hadn't done a lot of pieces that were over 4 minutes, and we were just talking, and he said, "Oh, I'll take a look at them." And he looked at him and went, "Oh, what the problem is right here. You need to do this. Your story arc doesn't do that, and your end doesn't pay this off." Like he just looked at it, and in one view it was like, and that's it, right? And I was like, "This is incredible." And so he liked it. I think one of his first early gigs, if I remember, was a junior copywriter at an ad agency.
Oh
Probably,
wow.
yeah. Um, Before he went off to Oxford or something. But like
Yeah.
he's just one of the smartest people I've ever met, and
Yeah.
funny as hell. I mean, he plays some tough characters, but he's a incredible guy. Um, yeah, and that's how Liev got involved.
Wow. Wow. So you worked for all these like massive agencies, and then what was it kind of meeting and working with Liev that inspired you to go off on your own?
No, not really. No, I think, it was just something, it was fun for him, right? He's got enough going on. Like he does incredible things. He's got a great charity called Blue Check, where he's helping, the efforts in Ukraine. Like he's got Broadway TV movies. He's got a full table, but he's just constantly, working and thinking and creating. So this was something I think that sounded exciting to him, and he got involved. I was at Mother at the time, Mother New York, another agency. And what was exciting about being there is we had a group of people that started this whole idea of, maybe we don't always need ad guys to do the advertising. Maybe we need makers and thinkers, and then we have some senior people from the industry that understand, what I was explaining earlier about the Kirk Souter thing. Like people took me under the wing. They didn't squash me. They helped me understand what I was doing and how I could turn that into real communication. And that started to happen at Mother, where we had film editors turning into writers, and we had account people. I think one of our account people went off to be a showrunner for The Walking Dead, or she's working at a level like that. But it really came into play that we had people saying, "Hey, can I give that a shot? Can I?" We were directing a lot of stuff on our own, and a writer may say, "Hey, I've always wanted to direct. Can I direct?" And this idea of um, having makers come in and create became more and more exciting. And what I really loved about being at Mother was the culture. It was the culture. The culture was everything. People loved coming to work. They all hung out in groups afterwards. They helped each other out. There wasn't that crazy competition you get at some of the big agencies. Um, but it really came down to wanting to be with my son and have my son see me growing up and taking him to the office, and the idea of naming the agency after him, was like kind of cool. And that's really where it came out. And also I wanted to do different stuff. I really wanted to apply different techniques, just communication techniques to solve problems. We had one client come in, Minted, Minted.com, phenomenal founder, Miriam, uh, and they were known for their holiday cards and their whole wedding package. But they were doing a lot of incredible work. They were doing textile design, they were doing original art, they were doing all kinds of stuff that they weren't known for. And so Miriam actually was talking with Andy Spade about doing this. So we got involved, and they were thinking about, well, what do we do? Do we do digital banners? Do we do this? And we ended up doing a 50-day project for them that was really designed for PR, that we could get all of the magazines and all the newspapers that have anything to do with art and design to do articles about us, because we were doing this amazing 50-day project. Every day it was something new. It was all based off of art. It was all done by the minted artists, or we brought in some big name artists through RX Arts, which is a nonprofit that I believe is Jeff Koons' nonprofit. They rebuild wards at the hospital for the terminally ill kids. So it was all great. So we did this 50-day program. Every day was different. It was really exciting. There were shows, there was things. And at the end, it was an auction, and we auctioned off, we sold all the pieces, all 50 pieces. And those pieces that went to RX Arts. But I think that's an example of, how would we approach this, if it were ours, and looking at what the budget is. Yeah, we can do some digital banners to communicate, you're making textiles now, but what if we actually did it in real time, used social media, used PR, and used all these other methods that weren't paid ads, right? So instead of doing paid media, we created something with the artists and we gave it back to the community. And the auction, the last day, the 50th day, was the opening of Art Basel in New York. So of course we had all these people in from all over the world, and we were able to have an event and a party and a night out of it. But again, it's just a way of we were solving the same problem. We just didn't do the typical, way of, let's do some online ads. It was like, oh, let's do something interesting. Like, you're a creative company. Let's be creative and let's make creative stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like you guys do a lot of different stuff. Is there a specific aspect of marketing or a specific type of service that you generally offer your clients?
We get asked that all the time, and it's the worst answer in the world is, I don't want to say, we've been able to do everything from launch restaurants from scratch, right? Like, we're not in the restaurant business. And we've done end of the year digital analytics for Hulu, like breaking down how America watched television, from rom-coms to horror films, from state to state. And we got in there and we created like 5 games for Hulu that were all online games. We're not a digital company. So what we're able to do well is break down assignments, look at it holistically, and figure out what kind of team we need to build in order to tell that story. And what that does is it makes sure that the brand has the absolute right group of people on a project, or if it's a retainer, they've got the right team that they're going to live with for a while. And the difference is they're not stuck, and I hate to use that word, the brand's not stuck with the guys who were sitting in the office who weren't working at the time, right? And I've seen it my whole life. I worked in enough agencies to know a new client comes in. It might not be the biggest client. You meet some of the people. You're really excited. You get the account, and then they put these guys on from over here, juniors or people who just aren't working. And I've watched guys who are amazing at doing beer commercials try to do female deodorant, and it like at that point it's like why? So that's one of our approaches, and it's unique. It's in the sense of, if you think about like how you make a movie, how Hollywood makes a movie. If you're going to do an action film or a horror film, you bring in those experts, right? You need the stunt guys, you need the helicopter pilots, you need all that kind of stuff. If you're doing a rom-com, you don't need that team, right?
Hmm.
So we build to projects the way Hollywood would build towards a movie, right? You have the right producer, you have the right cameraman, you have the right writer, you have the right, account person on there, you have the right insurance. We try to make sure that we're building to a client, and not taking our guys and just throwing it on the client.
Hmm. Got it. That's a very unique and lean and mean way to approach this. So you basically you agree to terms with a client, and then you find the people that would best serve the vision that you're having for them.
Yeah, and between Andy Spade and Liev and myself, those people all exist in our Rolodexes, to be an old guy and say Rolodex. But yeah, it's easy for us to do it, and the clients know that going in. There's no,
Yeah.
who you're talking to in meetings will be on your brand the whole time. So yeah, that's how it works. I think the other unique thing that we do because of that, some of these people won't stay on for the entire project, right? So if I bring the sociologist in or I bring the architect in and they're helping create this thing, they don't necessarily need to be there the whole time. But what we do is we bring these people all in, and for the first part of the project, it's kind of like a writer's room where everybody gets to get around, and they all come from different backgrounds and different expertise, and we talk about the project, and we've got a strategist there keeping everybody in check as far as what ideas go, and everybody comes to the table with a different way of approaching things, to solve problems, and it makes for this very unique, turnaround in how ideas get finished. Instead of just coming and going, here's your 30-second spot, here's your social media thing, oh, here's your influencers over here, and blah blah blah. We come in and be like, oh, you know what? We're going to do a scripted 2-hour movie. We've looked at your budget. We've looked at what your media buy is. We can do a scripted movie for half the price. Get it, get it out into the world. It's all branding. You're in the whole thing, but it's organic, and that's the kind of thing. They can say no. They can easily say no. We want our 30-second TV spot for the Super Bowl, but the point is, working with us, you're going to get that as well, right? Well, we're still going to come back and give you what you're asking for, but we're also going to come back and be like, but here's a couple other ways we can look at it based off of what your budget is that may have a different impact for you. We
Hmm.
had LVMH come to us to talk about, what do you guys want to do, and we've got this huge portfolio of brands, and they gave us the assignment of just look at the champagnes we have and come back to us with some ideas. And we came back, I don't know, 6 weeks later with 90 different ideas that started from scripted movies, from purely fictional scripted movies about the region of Champagne, down to podcasts. And it was everything in between. We had episodic things about female athletes for Viv Clicquot. We had, all different kinds of stories. We had ghost story. We had, my favorite was a podcast about ghost stories. I might have this wrong, but if I hope I have it right. It's like there were more battles fought in the region of Champagne because of its location in Europe, than any other area around. And they have all the caverns, obviously, for the Champagne. And we wanted to do a whole thing about ghost stories. We wanted to do the ghost stories of Champagne, and they were still all very romantic. They were all based around Champagne, the region, but they're also around Champagne. And again, I'm going off on tangents, but I love that that project, but it was fun. So, and we had different people come in. So there was the super big, it because they also said there's no, don't think about a budget, right? So here's a 2 hour scripted thing written by so and so, directed by so and so, all the way down to, for $8,000 we're going to do ghost stories. So um,
Wow.
those kind of projects are really fun for us. So yeah, again, we did
Yeah.
festivals in the caverns and um, all kinds of stuff.
So you guys, it's you're not just a hammer and then everything looks like a nail. You're like a hammer, a chainsaw, bowling pins. You are like whatever idea we come up with that we think will work best for you, we can execute on.
Yeah, yes, and responsibly. I mean, I want to make that like perfectly clear.
Yeah.
It hits exactly what you need. It's your
Yeah.
business. We know what your business needs are. We know what your targets are. What we're proposing nails that. It's not what you
Hmm.
expected, but it nails it. And again, like I said, we'll still come back and say this is how we blow it out through paid media and some of these other things. But this is gonna do more for you based off of who you are than just doing the other piece.
Hmm. Wow. I love that. Yeah, I really appreciate creative marketing. I was a huge Tim and Eric fan in college, and then Old Spice came out with commercials that were essentially Tim and Eric episodes, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, there was a campaign when I was young in the business, and again, just like I saw it, I was like, who did that? It was for Miller Lite. It was like Miller Lite by Dick, right? It was like this character, and they were just they were outrageous, but they were so insightful and funny. I don't think it did the brand good, right? Because I think it alienated its core Miller Lite,
Yeah.
consumer, but the creative behind it was amazing. And in the end, I got to work for those guys because they were the creative directors at Mother. So
Oh,
uh,
wow.
yeah, Paul and
Yeah,
Linus. It was like,
that's so
oh, you're the guys who did Miller Lite. There was one spot that I just never forget. It's my favorite spot, and it makes no sense because it does nothing. But it was the view on the television was sideways, right? And then the camera just pulls back to show that you're watching it on a television because the guy's laying on the couch. It's like ads by Dick. I was just like, why? But of course, again, not a perfect example of how to do something right for your client, but it just the thinking behind it and the creativity behind it was like, this is such a cool business.
Yeah. That makes me think there's like an opportunity for a reality show that is a cross between Mad Men and like a police procedural show where it's like, how are they gonna figure out this one?
Yeah, there's I mean,
I
people.
would watch the shit out of that show,
Yeah,
by
I
the
would.
way.
It's funny because it's my industry. Like watching Mad Men and stuff like I know that person, I know that person, I know that like you can see all these areas. Like I don't know. My mother-in-law watched it religiously because that was her era, right? She
Oh,
that,
wow.
and then just trying. There's been a lot of other shows that like take place in an agency, but to your point, nobody's gotten to that other side of like it's kind of insane. Like being in an agency in good creative agencies, it's kind of insane. The players are eccentric, right? And the creatives are eccentric because that just is what creatives are like. But then you've got just some like the smartest people on the planet are sitting in these different roles. They're running agencies, they're strategists, they're planners, account people. It's just incredibly smart people. So yeah, it's the world of advertising is kind of a circus.
Absolutely.
But again, I think that's why it was so important for me to make sure we had a shop that created a culture. That was a culture you wanted to be at. And the first office we had was on the Lower East Side of New York, and everybody knows the Lower East Side. Is the old creative side of New York where all the broke artists lived before they went to Williamsburg. And um, we had a storefront. So what we were able to do is we had the group of people working in the back, and the front we treated like a gallery. We put up either people's work from the office or we did creative things for clients. and we put that up. We designed our own clothing. In fact, at one point we had the legal team from Vans Shoes call me and say, "Hey, look, we can't stop you from making stuff because your Vans with an apostrophe S." And I was like, "Yeah, it's named after a little boy." And they said, your stuff's so cool, man. Would you mind like not selling it on your website?" And we're like, "Sure." You know, they were great. Vans was great. And I have like a past history with them, not personally for me, but my mom grew up in Santa Monica, and she and my aunt used to hang out with the guys who created Vans. So it was like I just felt like it was kind of a full circle thing. And I grew up in San Diego, so of course I grew up wearing Vans, but different Vans. But we
Yeah.
were making hats and shirts and other things and putting them up in the store. We were doing skateboards for clients. We were doing surfboards. We had one of our clients was called Energia. It was an all natural energy drink, like 5 hour, but it was all natural. So we created things that required natural energy to propel. So we did all these custom bikes, and that's what we gave to influencers instead of just saying, "Hey, will you like hold up the thing?" We're like, "Hey, here's a bike. It's a branded bike. It's for you. You mind riding it and posting it, right? About our brand." So, and then we worked with these young professional female surfers, and we made them custom surfboards with the logo on it. And of course, they can't go surf in competition with them because they have their team boards. We're like, "Do you mind taking these out and posting?" And we went out and did films with them. But it was fun. It was like we created, we did custom things that like surfboards and bicycles and skateboards that required natural energy to propel. And that was part of our campaign, which was fun. And again, at the end of the day, it didn't cost the client that much. Each bike was like $500. And to pay an influencer, some influencers want a lot more than $500. They just loved having a bike, right? And same with the surfboards. For a few $100s, we could make a really cool surfboard to actually sponsor a young, semi-professional or professional surfer. You couldn't do that for a couple $100. So there's different
Yeah.
ways you get to play. And again, this is why I was like, this business is an incredible puzzle to solve. But you can do it in interesting ways like that as well.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like the majority of your clients are one-off. They're not necessarily recurring clients. Do you is someone on the team constantly out there kind of hustling and finding deals, or how exactly do you find new business?
Good question. We do have clients that are retainer clients that
Okay.
stick around with us for a while, but like all businesses, especially when COVID hit, right? Like half your brands disappeared, half your CMOs disappeared.
Yep.
A lot of senior people at big brands moved on in the world, right? Like they moved upstate and they bought a house and they weren't going back. So we do retainers, and we have retainer clients. But to answer your question, a lot of it is word of mouth. We probably should do a better job. But we do have people out there, knocking on doors and making phone calls, and when a CMO moves from one job to another, there's a lot of that happens. And then we've been victim of the same thing. We were on retainer with one of the big soda companies, and there was a switchover of brand managers, and the new team came in, and basically we never even met them. They basically were like, "Yeah, we work with this agency." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It was,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's what happened. It happens all the time, and
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for that. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's you all do such creative, uh, unique, interesting, eye-catching, remarkable things that it not only markets your clients well, but then other, folks maybe the same industry or similar verticals are like, "Oh, who did that?
yeah,
Get me Scott." So, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of, great marketing.
yeah, it's exciting. And Andy and I have been best friends for 30 years, and he has an agency, Partners in Spade. They've done some just absolutely remarkable things over the years. And last year, his daughter went off to college. She's a year older than my kid. And we were talking, and he's now on the West Coast. He's in Berkeley. And he was like, we just need to merge the two companies and get together and do these things together again, right? Now that his daughter's off and he can really focus on being creative again. Not that he ever stopped. He's been working on this incredible sculpture show for a while. He too is a famous, is a well known artist and collage artist.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a dream come true because we've actually over the years have almost worked on each other's stuff across the board. We'd get together and be like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. And we would do all that stuff. So I was around to launch Kate Spade and Jack Spade, and he was around to help me with Minted and all these other projects. So it was just the right thing to do. So at the beginning of the summer, we decided to, let's just put our heads back together and be one again. So that's a
Hmm.
really interesting new chapter for us, to have a West Coast agency and a East Coast agency. But we're
Hmm.
both, like we think exactly the same. So it's been something that's been great. Like for an example, here's a good example of Andy. When Andy did launch Jack Spade, the men's line of Kate Spade, he had Mike Mills, a director, do a documentary on Paperboys, and that ran in theaters, and it might have been up for a couple of awards, but his point was like Andy was thinking, the first time as a guy, as a boy, that you have a bag is when you're a paper boy, right? That's your first satchel. So that was out of the gate how they were going to launch Jack Spade, was let's do a documentary on Paperboys. And it made sense because if you tie it back to that's your first bag, then and it's not, it's masculine and it gets dirty and it can do all the things it does. It drew attention to what Jack Spade was as a brand. So
Hmm.
that was, and again, it's like that's he and I think in such similar ways of, yeah, we're not going to go out and do a poster campaign. Let's do a documentary on Paperboys, first person to carry it back, right? So it's exciting. It's exciting to be with him again.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you made a point of talking about how valuable and excellent mother's culture was, and you
Yes.
you you pulled that into Van's General Store. Can you talk about what you took and then what you improved upon and how you maintained that company culture?
Sure. I think I think what I took away from, so coming from big agencies where a lot of cubicles, a lot of very serious people, a lot of money going in and out, so a lot of stress at these big agencies, to Mother, who still had big clients, and so they had an open forum. Do I believe the open forum works? I don't know. It's hard to work when you can hear everybody. But the point was, everybody was one, right? Everybody was equal. There wasn't titles, there wasn't this, there wasn't that, but the idea that it was fun to go to work and it was fun to work with these people from all over, was really the key for me to say, this is the most important part of being in any business, is that you're having fun, your people are having fun, meaning they're taken care of, they like coming to work and they're passionate, right? They give it their all. And that was something that I knew just had to transform, and then or transfer over. And then the other side of it was something we started doing, which was we talked about earlier, was it wasn't just necessarily the ad guys who were hired to be a writer or an art director that were doing the creative. There was people who were like, I fancy myself a creative writer. I'm an account person. I would love to try this. And that started to work really well because same way I started, right? These other people were getting opportunities to see if that was something they want. It could work or it might not work. But really what started to happen was we were getting more and more projects, and we were doing different types of things. So I realized, well, I need this type of person. I need a lighting designer to come in and explain this to me, right? Not an account person. I need a lighting designer. And that's it. And as I saw, where Mother had its roles and its departments, and probably the best design group on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, and an experiential group. Like they're brilliant. I really wanted it all in one and not in groups. And after making the decision to start my own place, and talking to Liev, I was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and then we really are going to look at the whole idea of it's not about having advertising creatives. It's about having makers. So
Hmm.
that's what I took. Mother, really shows the power of culture. They do great work, great people. But cult for me, it was the culture, it was the people. It was fun to go to work every day.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. We are coming towards the end of our time together. This has flown by. I could definitely ask you questions for the rest of the afternoon, but I will respect your time. Um, a sizable amount of our audience is financial advisors, and a lot of them love to work with business owners. So, to the extent that you are comfortable sharing, do you currently have a personal financial advisor?
Yes, yeah, we do.
You do.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah.
And how did you find them, and why did you choose them?
Um, Through friends, really, it
Prince.
came down to it came down to friends. Friend of mine has a company on the floor, actually, that his father had started. It was the first company that was actually allowed on the floor to
Mhm,
do business, and they've carried it on. He's just been a personal, like, hey, what do I do, kind of advisor. And then when my wife's company took off, and we started to take off, he was like, let me get you over to my friend who does my personal finances. I was like,
mhm.
do I have a personal finance person? So that's how we learned about that. But it was word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, we
Um,
do. There's a part of our group that's which might be relevant or not relevant, but there's a part of our group that's just uh, does investment decks for people. We are constantly being called by people who are going to start a new hotel chain, or people who are going to do something else, or Convene is one of our clients. I don't know if you guys know what Convene is, but it's kind
I
of
don't.
it's the American Express Platinum version of what WeWorks was, right? It's shared
Uh,
office space, but it's impeccable. Food, the atmosphere, design, and they're global. But we get called in to do investor decks for clients a lot. And we've got a group of guys, people, that do that really, really well.
mhm. Awesome. Awesome. All right. And the final question of our interview is an open-ended question. You can take it in any direction that you like. And that question is, what are you working towards?
I'm working towards happiness, to be quite honest, right? Like, I'm working towards joy and happiness. And when you're working with clients you like, and you have people around you, it makes it better. And when you find yourself in a situation where you're trying to work because you have to pay bills, and you have clients who maybe not, be kind to everybody, but you have to do it because you got to pay your bills. It creates a bad feeling, right? It's the opposite of what we talked about, mother. It's like, I don't want to go to work today, even though I love everybody I'm working with, what we're working with. You're like, I, we always say you're only as good as your client, because we can come up with the best things in the world, but if your client doesn't want to, understand it or buy it, or if they're just not on the same page, they may be brilliant. So maybe we're going to be brilliant through our client, but in other cases, that's what we have to offer. And I've seen it happen, and we've gone through it in our 10 years where we've been in situations with clients where people weren't having fun. They weren't happy. And it's not always about having fun, but I'm really working to make sure that the when we have assignments and the people who come in know that this is going to be good, and I'm going to be with good people, and I'm going to get great work out of it.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. And you're gonna visit your son at college often.
Yeah, we have a house. So he's going to Syracuse, and we're in the city, and we have a house right in the middle, in Sullivan
Perfect.
County. So it's the 2 hour drive for each of us.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
That's exactly what my parents talked me into. I'm from Tampa, Florida, and I really wanted to go to FSU in Tallahassee because a lot of my friends are going there. It's a 4-hour drive, and my parents are like, "Why don't you just go to UCF in Orlando? It's only 2 hours away. Like, campus is better, the beach is better." And I was like, "That's a great idea."
You got tricked. Little
I
child
did.
psychology on you.
My dad literally brought me to Tallahassee. He's like, "Look how shitty this beach is, man." And then we went to Orlando. He's like, "Look at this amazing beach." And I was like, "You got me.
Yep.
Sold. Let's go."
Good job, Dad.
So well played. You are playing from the same excellent playbook there, Scott. Scott,
Awesome.
where can our audience find out more about you?
Really, vansjournalstore.com, vgsny.com. That's where you're going to find most of the info.
Okay, cool. We will link to that in the show notes. Scott, this was awesome, man. Super
Thank you.
super
Yeah.
enjoyed getting to know you, man. You're awesome.
Thank you
So
so much.
yeah. All right, to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See ya.